It shouldn't.
Okay, I'm coming towards the end of the questions that I have for you. I want to move on to the discussion to inheritance. And again, this is something that's very well known in Islam, that a daughter inherits half of what her brothers inherit. This obviously if the parents pass away. How is that fair?
I think I would like to stop first of all on that particular statement that a daughter inherits half of what the sons inherit if the parents pass away. I think it's really important that there are many situations in inheritance where that's not the case.
Okay.
Although I'll start by saying yes, the general rule لِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ, that is the majority of cases, it would be the case that a male at the same level, for example, a child, a male would inherit twice that of a female.
Okay.
So let's answer that first.
Yeah, because you've been saying all the way
show
through the podcast that the Sharia comes for the ghalib and, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. But I want to talk about some situations in which that's not the case so that people don't take it as a qaida, which is absolute. It's not absolute. In fact, there are situations where a woman inherits more than a man. But let's just take, for example, this situation where you have a man who passes away and he left behind sons and daughters. A mixture.
Okay.
The son takes double that which the daughter takes.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, we have to understand from this that this is actually a very simple situation to understand. Typically, boys, the son in this case, will have spending obligations. He will have to spend upon his sister. He will have to spend upon his wife, if he has one. He'll have to spend upon his mother, if she's still alive. He will have to spend upon, typically, that's going to be his role.
Yeah.
As for that woman, that money she receives, nobody she has to spend it on at all. No one. Except in some situations, if her parents are really poor and there is no one to spend on them except her and she's wealthy, that's a different matter. But typically, that money is hers. Okay. Handbags and shoes. She can, at the end of the day, if that's what she wants to spend it on, that's what she can spend it on. She doesn't have to spend it upon anybody. But typically, that boy would have to spend it even if we say no one was left except just that brother and sister. That boy may well be obliged to look after his sister.
Yeah, true.
But that sister, she doesn't have to spend upon him. So that's one reason.
Okay.
But it's actually a misconception that it's a universal rule that men receive double what women receive in inheritance. Sometimes men and women receive the same. So let's take, for example, a person who dies and leaves behind a sister on their mother's side and a brother on their mother's side. They inherit equally, half and half, 50-50. The sister on the mother's side and a brother on the mother's side. Okay. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَإِن كَانَ رَجُلٌ يُورَثُ كَلَالَةً أَوْ إِمْرَأَةٌ وَلَهُ أَخٌ أَوْ أُخْتٌ فَلِكُلِّ وَاحِدٍ مِّنْهُمَا السُّدُسُ. He said, if there is a man who dies without any children or a woman, and they have a brother or sister on the mother's side, every one of them, whether male or female, inherits a sixth.
What do you mean by brother and sister on the mother's side?
So this is, we think from the dead person here. So Abdullah dies, and Abdullah has a half brother and sister. The half brother and sister are half from his mum's side. In other words, that his mum was previously married or subsequently married, and he has a half brother and a half sister. They inherit equally, 50-50 dead. Like a sudus, a sixth, and a sixth. Or if they are more than that, then they share a third, equally among themselves. The male and the female do not get different amounts. So that's an example when they inherit the same. They may inherit more. So for example, let's take a woman dies, leaving behind her husband and 2 daughters. Okay? The husband inherits a quarter, and the daughters inherit a third each.
Oh, wow.
So now the daughters inherited more. Even each individual daughter inherited more than their father inherited from their mother who passed away. And there are some situations like that. For example, a wife dies, leaving behind a husband and leaving behind a single daughter. The husband takes a quarter, she takes a half, the daughter, and she inherits the remaining as well. She inherits what remains from it. There are some situations, even in which a woman inherits and a man doesn't inherit anything. So let's take, for example, a woman who dies. She leaves behind a husband and she leaves behind a father, a mother, a daughter, and a granddaughter from her son.
Okay.
A granddaughter from her son. If it was a grandson from her son, he wouldn't inherit anything.
Oh.
But the granddaughter from her son inherits a sixth.
Okay.
So if it was her brother, he wouldn't inherit anything. The reason he wouldn't inherit anything is what he has left is al-baqi, whatever's left. And there's nothing left in that situation. There's nothing left for him.
Right,
because
I see.
each share has been given out to other people. And she takes a fixed share of a sixth. But if it was the case that she had a brother, the brother gets nothing because there is nothing left for him.
Yeah.
So yes, these are not it's not the most common situation,
Sure.
but there are situations. It's not that Islam didn't set a principle. Women, you don't deserve anything. Men, you deserve more. Rather, each situation is set out by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are times when a woman gets equal. There are times when she gets more. There are times when she inherits and the man inherits nothing. But the general principle is that when it comes to, for example, children on the same level, or when it comes to brothers and sisters on the father's side, or full brothers and sisters, generally speaking, it goes in the level that the man will take double that which the woman takes, but her wealth belongs to her alone.
Correct, yeah.
And the man typically has obligations to spend out of his wealth. And that's just me finding not me, but the scholars of Islam mention it as from among the wisdoms you can take. But ultimately, we have to submit to Allah. When we understand that Allah knows best for us, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to oppress anybody among us. He's not oppress any woman among us, any man among us. Allah Azza wa Jalla knows best. And that's more important even than the reason I just gave, which is just to say that, typically, for example, a man has spending obligations that he has to spend upon women, but the woman doesn't have to spend upon anyone. That's fair enough, but that's only one example. Really, the ultimate example is أَلَا يَعْلَمُ مَنْ خَلَقَ. The one who created you knows better what to give you and what not to give you.
Yeah, and I think that's something that's, like I reiterate, like I said before, that's a constant theme that has come up time and time again over this podcast. We've mentioned some very controversial issues. And of course, the number one reason why we submit to that is because this is what Allah has said. Having said that, within each and every single one of them, you've brought about, from yourself and from scholars before you, wisdoms that we can understand as human beings, let alone the hikmah and the wisdom that is with Allah that we're not even aware of. I think that's an important point to bring out, that every single ruling within the religion of Islam that we've discussed today, there's not been a single one where I don't think you've actually sat opposite me and said, just accept it. You've always brought about wisdoms, even though as Muslims we should be accepting it anyway, as you established in the start.
Because we have to understand that whatever wisdoms we bring are just our limited ability to see the wisdom in certain things. But actually the wisdom is far greater than that.
Yeah.
We mentioned, for example, a woman remaining in a house. And, some of the scholars mentioned, for example, وَقَرْنَ, the word used is the word qarar. And the word qarar, it means to be settled there. That's where she's going to be settled and where she's comfortable and based around. And, there are so many wisdoms that are mentioned. But the point is that ultimately, we need to have that trust in Allah that those wisdoms are there, that Allah doesn't legislate dhulm for anyone, and Allah doesn't legislate hardship. Even this word taklif, this word al-mukallaf.
They say that burdened, yeah.
Allah hasn't burdened you with anything. لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها. Allah has honored you with Islam. Allah has given you gifts. Allah has blessed you. Allah hasn't burdened anyone with anything. But these examples are just to show that there are wisdom, so people watch and say, okay, yeah, I can see some of the wisdom in that. But actually the wisdom in it is far greater than even what any human being can express or can explain.